Well, he is the only driver to win Rookie of the Year titles in all of NASCAR's premier divisions, and he is getting ready to take over the iconic number 43. We're talking about Erik Jones. Erik, welcome. You're inside the wind tunnel. How are you today?
Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Listen, you're on the brink of making a change and joining Richard Petty Motorsports. When this deal came together, did you have the realization that you were getting behind the wheel of a car that absolutely generations have recognized?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty exciting for me. When we first started the talks with RPM, they came to us later in the year and we're interested in seeing what we had going on as far as plans and what we were working on for next year. And things really just kind of aligned with what we were working on and what they were working on and kind of the goals we had in mind. And for me, I thought it was cool off the bat. I looked at the 43 car and myself, I'm a fan of the history of the sport, and my family has been NASCAR fans, for a long time. So there's some Richard Petty fans in there too. So that was really cool, and a lot of people really excited, including myself, to get in that race car and see what we can go out and accomplish.
It's kind of interesting to me that, as you said, you're a student of the game, and a friend of mine once said, Tony Kornheiser from ESPN, that there are two sports in the world that are passed on from generation to generation, and that's a love of baseball and a love of motorsports. Tell me a little bit about that auto racing relationship with your family and how you got bitten with the bug.
Yeah, I guess it was for me. It was almost a love of cars to start with. My family was in the car business, working on Corvettes mainly, actually Corvette restoration and repair. So I was always really interested in cars, and beyond that, we always had the NASCAR race on Sundays, and we would always watch the start and the end. There were some times we had to get a little work done in the middle of those races, but we were always tuned in, and I was always interested in racing. And as I got a little bit older and got interested in trying to do something myself, the opportunity came up to start racing quarter midgets when I was about 7 years old. And so it was really early. I was probably, 3, 4, 5 years old when I was first interested really in cars and in NASCAR and being tuned into the sport each and every week.
So tell me about the conversation with your family when you decided I want to hop into a quarter midget and start a racing career at the ripe old age of 7.
Yeah, it was it was pretty easy for me actually. I had a go kart that I just rode around at the house and stuff like that, and I think my parents could tell I was pretty interested in that. Actually, my mom though got me into it. She was reading a magazine one day, and they had an article in there about quarter midget racing and kids getting involved in it, and she thought that would be something I'd really like. So she came home and talked to me about it, and then talked to my dad about it, and he wasn't actually. We were just starting a company that he was involved in, so money wasn't exactly something that was flowing yet. And so we took the leap though. She I think kind of forced his hand, got us going quarter midget racing, and we were locked in ever since.
And certainly climbing up the ladder and the NASCAR and non NASCAR home tracks are where you honed your skills. Uh, I'm interested in how important that short track experience was and still is to who Erik Jones is and how he drives.
Yeah, it's pretty important. I look back and I mean that's where we all start at some point. And for me, it was growing up in Michigan. I started racing at Owasso Speedway in a street stock and moved up into a late model after that, and then started traveling a little bit, mostly around the Midwest. And as the years went, a little bit more down south. We kind of heard that's where uh, you had to go race. I guess we started winning a lot of races in the Midwest, and then people started saying, well, you need to go win races down south. So we started traveling down south and racing down there too, and doing all that stuff. But raced a lot of great racetracks and learned a lot, and not only great racetracks, but great race car drivers and guys who are capable of racing in NASCAR and just never. Some of them never got the opportunity. Some of them never had the right chance to get there and do things. But guys that race on the short track level that are more than capable of going out and being competitive at the top level of the sport. So I think that's where you learn a ton. You kind of cut your teeth, and if you can go prove that you can win at those levels, and especially big races at those levels where everybody's at, I think you've shown that you can move up through the ranks and be competitive.
Talking to Erik Jones, who is hard to believe at the age of 24 is a seasoned veteran in the NASCAR Cup Series. Erik, you talk about the short tracks. Look, you can't run the short tracks without engaging in a couple of fandangos and maybe some confrontations. How tough did a youngster have to be? I mean, you started at what, 13 years old. What was the intimidation factor like for you?
Yeah, I mean it's different, and at that time it was kind of a unique time in the sport. There wasn't a lot of really young guys racing late models at that point. I was kind of on my own island in the series that I was racing. I was by far the youngest guy. And I mean, for me, I kind of tried to keep the perspective that, once we put the helmet on that we were equals. And no matter that I was 13 or 14 and they were 35 or 40, we weren't too much different in the seed. And, it was a balance. At first, you really try to go out and earn the respect and race the guys respectfully and just show that you can race and that you're capable of it. And if you can prove that, I think that respect gets returned. And I feel the same way now. If I go back and run short track races and race against the young guys, 13, 14, 15 years old, if they race me with respect, I don't treat them any differently, try to, push them around or anything like that. And I felt the same way, but there was definitely, scuffles along the way. I mean, you can't help but getting some incidents in that world, no matter how old you are. And especially for us, we were getting fast and competitive and running up front and running for wins. And that's when most of the scuffles happen is when you're going for the win. So it was interesting, but it teaches you a lot at a young age. You kind of grow up quick and learn how to handle situations and deal with people. And I, looking back on it, it was not fun at times, but it was really good for me to learn how to handle that.
And then as you started to make a name for yourself, you got absorbed into, and I've argued this for years, what has to be the best business model in all of motorsports, and that's the developments that Toyota makes to get youngsters and kind of usher them up the ladder. How important was that to you?
It was huge for me. It was really after 2012. I was racing down at the Snowball Derby with Kyle Busch and ended up racing with him at the end of the race and beating him. And he's what got me connected. I was 16 at the time and didn't really have many opportunities beyond what I was doing in late models, which was great. We were running well and winning races, but didn't have anything at the NASCAR level. So Kyle really took me and got me connected with Toyota and the people there and at KBM and the truck series and was able to kind of bring me in the fold and get me some opportunities at the next level. And fortunately, we were able to take advantage of them, win some races really early on and continue to move up through the ranks. But that really helped me. They had just actually lost, I believe, Kyle Larson. So they were really looking to kind of find another guy to move on to and latch onto. And that actually played in my favor as well, because they didn't want to, make the same mistake again, I guess, in their eyes. And so they really latched onto me and helped me out along the way.
Are you comfortable with what now seems to be the pathway? First, you had to bring the golden suitcase of money. Then you had to have the talent. And now all of a sudden, you've got to have the backing of a Toyota or a Chevrolet or a Ford to be able to make it to the ultimate prize. And that's where you're at in the cup level of NASCAR. Are you comfortable with the way the sport has changed?
Well, it's changed a lot. And it's funny. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day. It's changed a lot. That was only 7, 8 years ago that I was really trying to get into the sport. And since then, it's vastly different. I don't know. I wouldn't want to try to take the same pathway again. I think it would be really challenging for me, honestly, to make it in NASCAR today with the way some of the sponsorship is working in the lower levels and the way manufacturer support is. It would be a lot more challenging for me. I had enough backing to get me an opportunity, I guess is the way I like to tell it to a lot of people, but not much beyond that. And I don't know that in some cases if that's quite enough anymore. But you do still see some cases of guys coming up through there that, did get some good backing. Chase Briscoe now, he's going to be running the 14 car. I think he came up a similar way to what I did through the ranks. So it's definitely tough and it's changing, but I think there's a lot of good things for me that I look at for the next couple of years, especially with the next gen car and maybe what that model is going to bring to NASCAR. I think is going to help a lot with being able to get the guys who are younger and trying to come up through the ranks more opportunities without having to bring the big funding with them.
I don't believe you've had the opportunity to strap yourself in that Gen 7 car, but based upon the feedback from guys and fellow drivers that have, is it more of a race car? Because, I mean, let's face it, these NASCAR Cup cars, I think it's been referred to over the years as a tank.
Yeah, it's actually I did have the chance. I drove the next gen car at Homestead a couple.
Okay.
Well, it would have been back almost a year ago now, back in January of this year. So it was really early on in the testing. Honestly, it was only I think the third test they did with the car. I think it's changed quite a bit even since then, but it is definitely more of what I would have raced at the super late model level. Really,
Sure.
it's coilover car, independent rear suspension. Yeah, the technology on our cars now is on the outdated side. You could say. I mean, it's non-coilover, solid rear end, truck arm, steering box. We don't have rack and pinion, so it's definitely time to make that jump to kind of get into the modern 21st century technology, coilover, independent rear suspension. So I think all that stuff's going to be really cool and give us honestly a lot of opportunity to run at a lot of different tracks, and especially the road courses is probably where I'm most excited to drive it, just because I think it's going to drive so much better. And looking at the Roval test that they had a few weeks ago, the times were way faster, which that early on in the development of a car, the first time you ever go to a track, normally you're seconds off of what the current pace would be, and to see it seconds faster with less horsepower, and the first test I think was pretty impressive.
Along the way, it was well documented the relationship that you had with your family and the tightness of that family. And then, look, you were struck with a tragedy in the loss of your dad. How did that affect you?
Well, it was pretty challenging at the time, and I was, I guess, 2016. I would have been about 19 or 20 years
Yeah.
old at the time, and so I had just gotten to the point where we were working really hard on 2017 and getting an opportunity to move up to the Cup Series, and that was a big deal, at the time, and in I guess it would have been March. My dad found out he was pretty sick, and he didn't really have a lot of time left. And so by the time June came around, my dad had passed away, and so to go through that transition in that short of time is what made it so tough. At some point we all lose our parents, if we're lucky, because we've lived long enough to see that happen. And so it's coming, but you don't really expect it when you're 20 years old. And so that was a tough part for me. And my dad and I were really close. I would consider my dad my best friend before he passed away. He was the guy I talked to every single day, about everything, whether I had questions about what I was doing in NASCAR or just questions about a car I was working on, anything I really had going, I would get with him and kind of get his opinion on. So that's tough. For a long time, you kind of readjust and figure out. And my dad had a big hand in my racing career. His goal, when he retired, he wanted to help me, continue to run my business, because as a driver, you do have a business. I have employees and people who work for me, and trying to manage all that stuff. So he wanted to be involved in that, and there was a lot of things that I really had to take on really quickly, and my mom as well, to try to manage that, handle that on the side. So it was a pretty big adjustment in a really short amount of time.
The late Bill France Jr., when I lost my dad, coined a phrase that I've shared with others, and that's that there will always be a hole in your heart. But with time, you learn how not to fall into it. And I'm sure that's what you deal with each and every day. Nickname EJ, but then along comes Ken Squire, Hall of Fame announcer, and it's still a classic. That Jones boy. When that first got back to you, did you laugh? Were you surprised? I mean, because that's kind of stuck with you.
I was I was confused. It was funny. I had, that was 2017, and it was my rookie year. And we had a really good race at Darlington. We were up front a lot of the night. I think we ended up fourth or fifth. And I got in the car to ride home that night, and I had a good friend of mine down from Michigan actually that came down to watch the race, and another buddy from Charlotte that rode down with me. So they were hanging out in the motorhome watching the race all night on the pit box, and so I hopped in the car to ride home with them, and not thinking much of it. And we get 5-10 minutes down the road, and they kept messing with me, calling me that the Jones boy, and I told them, I said, look, I really have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know why you keep calling me that. And so they laugh and they find the clip and everything and pull it up and show it to me. I thought it was really cool. I mean, obviously a legendary, a commentator in the world of NASCAR. And so I thought it was just cool to have the acknowledgement of his to see me out on the track and that we were having a good night. So I was fine with it. I thought it was pretty funny. And, it's neat to see that it's caught on. I don't know if he still keeps up and sees that it's rolled this long, but I think he would think that was kind of neat.
Erik, it's been a real pleasure, and we wish you nothing but the very best first in the off season, and then when everybody finally gets to Daytona, and you get behind for the first time, that number 43 for the King, Richard Petty. Appreciate it. Best wishes, and thanks again.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.